Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to this Dane Arts Grant Advisory panel. It's cycle 2 for 2025. My name is Am Curette, and I am on the board, on the Dane County board, and each of the commissioners chair a panel to just kind of, first of all, just to hear what everybody is saying, which I think is very helpful for us to understand the different projects that are being submitted for applications. And then also just to get to meet all the reviewers as well. So just to review quickly the mission of the Dane Arts Commission, we're really committed to making our county stronger by supporting citizens, groups, and organizations that preserve our shared heritage, create arts and cultural opportunities for all the residents of Dane County. And there's really three key things that we strive for. One is to enable equitable access to the arts and local history in all of Dane County, give lots of opportunities for creative expressions in all forms. I think that's really important. And then really strive for overall creative excellence. So as I mentioned, I am on the commission. I think I've been on the commission 5 years now. It's gone so fast. I am a resident of Madison, a lifelong resident of Madison. I actually went to high school at Verona High School when it was only 100 people in a class. And then I've done different career stints in Milwaukee, Chicago, and in San Francisco. But I keep coming back to Madison because I love the accessibility of Madison in the arts and really in everything. So if you don't mind, if we can go around and introduce ourselves. I think, Robin, you're the only one I've worked with before. I think, oh no, maybe Megan, you and I think I might have been on a panel before. So I will start with Robin.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Robin Schultz. I use she, they pronouns. I believe I'd have to go back and double check, but I think I've been doing citizen grant reviews for about a decade now. So got to see a lot of them over time. Professionally, I work at the UW, so I'm the film advisor and the volunteer action committee advisor now at the Wisconsin Union. And then I do other things that every bucket of other duties is assigned. So I work with our summer camp, supervise some staff, and this week it's working on the homecoming parade. So we've got performers booked for that on Friday. So fingers crossed for good weather. And who would you like to go next?
Megan?
All right, it's been a minute since I've been in a virtual meeting. I'm Megan Landon. I use she, her pronouns, and I have been working on Dane Art grant review panels for a couple years now. I work at the Overture Center for the Arts. I am their gallery coordinator, so I work with the visual artists to get their shows up. I help coordinate programming, marketing, really every aspect of helping run those galleries. And then I'm also on the greater programming team at Overture, so see a lot of other
Don't wake her up.
performing arts going on.
I'm sorry, excuse me just a minute. Here. Sorry about that, you guys. I'm in California. Thank you, Megan. Desiree?
My name is Desiree Mayo. Most kids know me as Miss Mayo. I am a artist. I draw portraits, and actually I'm a Jackie of all trades. I do a lot of things. Anything that has to do with art, I can do it and put it together, sew, make clothes, do all of that. But my goal mostly is to make sure that history is not forgotten and that kids are represented of all cultures in schools. So I draw a lot of art from Black history, Hispanic heritage, Native American heritage, AAPI and Norwegian excellence. I do it all. And then I try to get the artworks into schools so that kids can start to see themselves and know that if people who have done amazing things in their history and culture, they can also do it as well.
Thank you. YJ?
Hi, everyone. My name is YJ. Thank you so much for this opportunity. I actually have a portrait from Desiree, the API figure, so super awesome to see you here. Yeah, so this is my second time doing the Dane Arts Grant Review. Prior to this, I was a reviewer for Arts Memphis back when I lived in Memphis, Tennessee. And I graduated with my master's in business analytics at UW-Madison. And then upon graduation, I've had the opportunity to help out with the Business of Art conference with Dane Arts, along with their website redesign. So I'm really happy to be here.
Excellent, thank you. And Emily, is that pronouncing it correctly? She might not be on. Emily?
Sorry, was having some technical difficulties. Hi, everyone. I'm Emily
worries.
Heidemann. This is my second time as a grant reviewer for Dane Arts. I also got the opportunity to participate in the most recent Dane Arts Business Conference as a panelist. I come from a journalism background, and I stumbled my way into the art marketing world about a year ago. I now am the marketing director for Carnelian Art Gallery. We're an art gallery. We're a brand new art gallery in downtown Madison, really just trying to seed more art gallery activity in our neck of the woods. As well as just provide a space for artists who really want to showcase their work and whatnot to the Madison art collector scene. So yeah, I do a lot of content creation, social media, event planning, et cetera, et cetera. Much more than that. I wear a lot of hats. So, but yeah, I'm really happy to be here today, and it's really great to meet everybody.
Terrific, thank you. Now tell me again, how many people are first-time reviewers? Okay, so just Desiree. So otherwise, everybody else is familiar with the process. Let me just kind of give you a quick overview of how this is going to work. So you've all read all the online applications that have assigned to you, taken notes. Now this is the time that we're going to be you've entered and saved, but we will actually submit today during our panel session. And again, we'll take lots of time, Desiree, if you have some questions. That's why Augusta's here. She can kind of help you to make sure that everything is submitted the way it needs to be done. So basically, the commission determines funding mainly based on your review. So it's really critical that you're fair, deliberate, and attentive to detail, because this really helps us determine how we distribute the funds that we have available. So, it's not an easy task to fill out that application. It's actually fairly involved with a lot of information that's being asked. So we want to make sure that we give it all the due diligence that for the effort that's actually been put in. We have criteria that you're all familiar with that we use for judging the merit of all of these applications. And I'm just going to go through briefly what the criteria is so we have it documented. So basically, we look at the quality and the creativity of the proposed project, make sure it stands out and has high artistic quality. The level of impact on the community is important. What is the benefit to the public, and is that benefit clearly defined? Have they made a compelling case? Evidence of very thorough as well as realistic, which is key, financial planning, and the budget elements are all clearly outlined so that you can understand them. The ability of the applicant to actually complete the project, for it to be it's well planned, and the operational aspects of it is very clear, so we feel confident that actually it can be executed. And then just lastly, just what is the impact and influence of the award to the overall success of the project? So they presented a compelling case that the project will happen, and that this funding is critical in order for that funding to happen. Any question on the criteria? I think you're all pretty familiar with it. So I think that is all in terms of preview on everything. Augusta, did I miss anything or anything you would like to add?
That sounds great. I just want to let you know that I'll be here for any technical questions. I won't be a discussant, so I won't weigh in on the merits of the application, but certainly here to answer any technical questions. And then, yeah, I think that was all. Thanks, Am, for covering everything. I think you're muted, Am.
Thank you. So I will introduce each project, and then I will ask the first reviewer to give their comments, and then the second reviewer to add any additional comments, and then it's open for everybody. We would like to hear from everybody if you have anything additional that you would like to add. Okay, so we will start with the first project. It's project identification 26437. It is under the category of theater. The organization is Capital City Theater, and they're asking $5,200, which is about 8% of their total budget. And Robin, you're the first reviewer, so you get to go first.
Great. Thanks, Anne. So this project is a concert that explores the classical side of musical theater's greatest composers. They mentioned featuring an orchestra of 50 professional musicians, a full choir, and soloists. So it is an intersection of Broadway and symphonic music, showcasing the work of local designers, technicians, and creatives. So the application really got into how Dane County folks are involved, both front and back of house. They feature soloists with roots at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. For the community and the population served, they're estimating an audience size of about 1,500. They will be partnering with the Bell Phillips Memorial High School to provide their theater program students with a free ticket. And they also provide a 15% discount off of tickets for senior citizens. Their application notes that their demographic tends to skew older and female, but that they hope to reach out to a wider community and draw younger audience members, as well as folks from traditionally marginalized communities. And when I see this mentioned in applications, my question is always how, and I didn't see the how of that detailed. So, it's a struggle for me when it gets mentioned that they want to do it. I know that the amount of text we have in our application is kind of small, but we do have supplemental materials. So when that gets called out, I'm always asking the question of how do you plan to do that? For public value, they offer a culturally rich experience accessible to a broad audience. Their intended outcomes tend to center on deepening community appreciation for symphonic roots of musical theater. They want to showcase the talent of local musicians as well as their singers and their creatives. Again, the note about wanting to engage new audiences, but really didn't get into the how of that. And then creating meaningful performance opportunities for Wisconsin-based artists. They're evaluating through audience surveys, attendance numbers, and engagement metrics on their social media. So they're speaking to how their success is measured by artistic impact, audience growth, and visibility for local talents. So one of my little questions to that is, are those success metrics measurable? So audience growth over time is, but the others seem trickier to assess. The financial planning, I think, is pretty solid for this project. So they're reasonably budgeting for about 60% of the house to sell at $35 a ticket. So that's one of those things I like to look at of, are they assuming they're going to sell 100% of the tickets? And if the budget is based on that. So this seems like a pretty fiscally reasonable plan for ticket sales. They've got a multi-channel marketing mix. But I thought that the estimate for their marketing seemed a little bit high because it was almost 17% of their total budget. So kind of taking a look at where that money might be getting spent, or providing more of a budget note breakdown on how that amount of money is getting parceled out. The other thing that seemed a little bit tricky and might skew kind of our ability to assess the percent of the budget being used on actual expenses is that they've got ticket sales tax listed as an expense. But that's just something that's collected and remitted separately to the state. It's not really an expense to the project. So that seemed like a little kind of a glitchy accounting thing to clean up. They do have 2 confirmed foundation support sources, as well as other individual donor contributions that are still pending or estimated, which is kind of normal in the grant cycle. Sponsorships are also listed up in income, and it may be better in another section depending on who those sponsors are. So if it's more of like a foundation sponsor or things like that, using the budget breakdown on the form to articulate that. They had 2 letters of support from the same person, kind of the same text, just redated. The letter wanted to draw a lot of attention to the way the applicant encourages young performers, but I didn't see that mentioned in the proposal itself. So if that's a highlight of the program, that would be something to kind of sing about up in the project narrative. And the letter speaks to the generalities of like the value of theater, but it never got into the specific value of the project being proposed. So when I look at those letters of support, I really want them to kind of sing about the project itself. I'd also recommend that they just give their key personnel document a skim to make sure it's up to date. Because some of the things in there I mentioned, like one of the principals is currently having a world premiere at the Turbine Theatre in London, running until May 2022. So as you're attaching these materials, it just strengthens your application if you're making sure everything's up to date.
Yeah.
Especially if they've done cool new things in the last couple of years, being able to highlight that as relevant new information. Their supplemental document was also really, really long, so maybe pare that down to make it the truly relevant info. Make sure to proofread it, because more than one season listed on that document was called the first full season since the pandemic. So kind of catching those things. But I love that they include a sizzle reel. The links to the sizzle reels really help kind of give you that visual and that sense of the program. So I always think that video-based supplemental materials are a great way to get that sense of production. And then opportunities for improvement are the things I kind of highlighted already, like how you plan to broaden your audience, pare down some of the repeated text from section to section. So like the mix of performers got listed multiple times on the application, and you've only got so many characters to work with. So use that space to your advantage. And then I would just always recommend using that budget narrative section to break down big ticket budget items so that we know what's really going on there.
Excellent. Thank you, Robin. YJ.
Yeah, I think Robin covered everything very thoroughly. Just one small comment was I could not see where on the application the production was occurring, like what the date of the production was. I know it gives a range of when it starts and ends, but the actual date I don't believe was provided. So I think that would be extremely helpful.
Okay. Anybody else have any comments on this Capital City Theater project?
I was just curious, I also very much appreciate the realistic budget planning when they say we're accounting for like 60% of the house. I had the thought of, they're estimating a reach of 1,500. Is that 1,500 matching, as they're saying 60%, we're reaching 1,500? Because a additional 40% would be even a much larger reach. Vice versa, if they're planning for 60% and that's a realistic estimate, is that the 1,500 reach? I just was curious if how those numbers aligned, or if there could be more information about how that reach was calculated.
All right, if no other comments, go ahead and score, and then you can submit. And then the way I work it is just raise your hand when you're done. So make sure we give everybody lots of time and before we move on to the next project.
And then I can let you know when I've received the
That'd be great.
scores on my end.
That'd be great, thank you. Actually, Augusta, can I ask you a question while they're scoring? Does anybody need to be recused on any of these projects? I forgot to ask you that before we started.
Thanks for asking. I do not have any recusals noted, but as Am said, if there's any applications that you feel you're not able to fairly review, let us know as soon as possible. But hopefully we've got that covered already.
Yeah.
Thanks, everybody. The scores have been received.
Okay, everybody feel ready to move on to the next one? Ready to go? Okay, excellent.
That everybody went before me. So now I understand how this is working.
How it's working. Okay, great, excellent. Okay, the next project is identified as number 26443. It's in the category of dance. It's the Kanopy Dance Theater. They're asking for $4,000, which is about 5% of the requested budget. And first reviewer is Megan, so you get to go first.
Great. Yeah, so Kanopy Dance, for this project, they are collaborating with the Sokolow Theater or Dance Ensemble out of New York City. And they are going to perform a work called Odes. Is that how he, let me see, yeah, Odes. And this is a rarely performed piece, which was choreographed by a well-known Jewish immigrant choreographer. And the project celebrates that legacy as both an artist and an activist. The performance will take place at the Overture Center next April. They will have lots of community engagement events. They have free open rehearsals, some master classes, which include 4 scholarships, Kanopy lab works, which are behind the scenes sessions, and artist talks, like a Meet the Artist event. They are offering 100 free tickets to underserved community members, communities through over 50 service agencies. They're working with Overture's community ticket program, I believe. In the program, they have 18 dancers total, some from Madison and some from this New York City group. And they estimate their audience reach to be about 1,500, same as the last one, and with a pretty balanced mix of youth adults and older adults. The community impact, they are hoping to expand access to world-class modern dance in Madison, honor the contributions of immigrant and Jewish artists, build artistic exchange between regional and national dance communities, and provide educational and participatory opportunities for students and the public. In terms of measuring their reach, they did have a few notes about how they plan to evaluate, with measured attendance, collecting feedback on social media, post-show discussions, and evaluating engagement at those outreach events. It was mostly qualitative analysis, which is super important. I think there could be some quantitative evaluation metrics there. Their budget highlights, so they are asking for $4,000 from us, which is, just to note, is the lowest amount of any of the grants we're reviewing today. It's also only 5.37% of their budget, which is the lowest percentage of any of the budgets we're looking at today. Most of the money that they're asking for, and most of their budget in general, is going towards their artist honoraria, which is yeah. Sorry, I just got lost in my notes here. Yeah, so they have a total of 41,000 going towards artist honoraria. And then they have several other funding sources. They've got individual contributions that are all confirmed. Ticket sales, they estimate a 70% sale rate for the house, which we noted that is very realistic for their, is helpful in budget planning and helps be realistic. They have foundation support, so they have those individual contributions, foundation support. They've also received some other public grants, and they have several in-kind donations. So their budget seems very supported. They've clearly worked to get several funding sources. And then their supplemental materials I thought were all great. Their letters of support were good. And their marketing materials all looked very nice. Personally, I think that supplemental materials are a fun way to see a variety of aspects of the projects. So I liked the variety there. I think in terms of evaluation, I love data in the arts, and I think data in the arts is underrated. So I think for programs that have been running groups that have been running annual programs for a while. I would love to see in their supplemental less marketing stuff and more like evidence. You know, we ask them, how are you going to evaluate this project? But we never see like the evaluation of those previous projects. I think that would be a really great way to kind of show how, you know, kind of show the evidence that you are going to be able to evaluate this project if you can provide a document or something that shows how you evaluated previous projects. But overall, great project, lots of community engagement, which I think was really, really a highlight for me.
Great, thank you, Megan. Emily.
I agree with everything Megan said. I think I'm also a data-oriented person, especially when it comes to projects related to the arts. And I would have appreciated seeing just a little bit more of an exclamation as to how Kanopy was going to measure the success of their event. But otherwise, I agree with everything that Megan said.
Right. Any other comments from other reviewers? Yeah, Robin.
I appreciated that they're creating this artistic collaboration between two companies, one here in the Midwest and one in New York City. Sorry, my mouse is being silly thing. Scrolling down in my notes. I also like the multiple points of connection for folks. So there's a lot of different ways to interact with this project, and some of them are free, which just makes it a little bit more accessible. But like Megan was saying, I think there's some strong supplemental materials here. So the letters of support overall were strong. I really liked how the second one notes the applicant's ability to reach those who've never experienced contemporary dance. I think that's part of like the hook and the special part of this program. And I thought they used supplemental materials to their advantage to show kind of past meticulous artistic development and the breadth and depth of their marketing and outreach. But like other folks said, the one place I see some improvement would be more info on like the methodologies for assessing impact and that ability to reach their audience.
Thank you. Jay, you had comment, yes.
Yeah, so I have like a nuanced view of one of the supplemental materials for the letter of support. I noticed that the first one was from Sandra Kaufman, who's the director of dance from Loyola University Chicago. I was a little, because typically on the application it lists letters of support from the community, and so I was wondering, you know, was she visiting from outside of Dane County to come into this event? And if that's the case, I think that's a really special part of this production, right? It's bringing people from out of town, so maybe that could be highlighted. Or yeah, maybe whether, you know, Sandra Kaufman lived in Madison and that's how she knew. I was just like a little confused when I saw her signature, and I'm like, oh wait, she's like not from the, you know, Dane County community in which we serve. But if it's the case that this production is bringing people from out of town, I think that absolutely flourishes our community here.
Any other comments?
I think one of the things that I saw that was pretty neat was that they were having like in kind from the hotel, like to be able to have people come into our community, and we even have hotels that are willing to help out our community. I just think that is just pretty awesome to have that, all of the different people who are able to support, or the different foundations that are supporting, because I've never really seen so much like support when it comes to the arts. But to be able to see that they're having support, and then the different, you know, places that are in kind to help out with photography and stuff like that, it's just really nice to have it. But to have a hotel say that they would do something in kind, that's pretty awesome.
Excellent. All right, any other comments? All right, then please go ahead and score, and then put up your virtual hand when you're complete. Excuse me. Oh, I lost Emily.
All the scores have been received.
Okay, thank you. Augusta, should we keep going or should we wait till Emily logs back in?
Let's see. I guess she was a little. Oh,
There we
she's
go.
back.
Here she comes. Awesome. Okay, the next project is identified as 26453. It's in the category of arts and education. The organization is Little Picassos. They're asking for $5,200, which is about 11% of the total budget. And Desiree is primary reviewer. Your comments, please.
Okay, so I'm gonna need y'all help after this because this is my first one. So
Excellent.
after reading about Little Picassos, they want to start it. It's actually started September 20th and it ends on in June. They have an open gallery that will celebrate on June 6th of next year. So they're gonna do like they having the art display. So Little Picassos is like what they do as an after school program for different for the low income kids. Most of them are African American, Latino, but they're gonna have people come in. Most like are less than 100% are less than 18 and under. So they're wanting to participate in the living, what subsidized or low income housing around Madison. So most of the kids are African American, Latino, or Asian American. They have done this before. A lot of the kids have been in it like a couple of times, like a couple years out. They are meet weekly for like an hour and a half, and it has to do with art, which is one of the greatest things for me because that means like working with kids and art is just great. I wish they would have had something like this when I was a kid. The help that they want, like they kind of make sure that they have like so many their lessons. There's like 140 of them. They are bringing in this year a whole chunk artist, which is awesome, and then two artists that are Latino. They have a program person for it, and then they have like 5 assistants. Their budget, they kind of detailed everything out. The feedback that they get for the success is from families. You hear from parents, they got letters in it that's from the parents and stuff, which is very nice. To be able to have like an open gallery so that everybody in the public can be able to see children's art is pretty impressive as well, because then it kind of keeps them going and encourage kids all at the same time, especially having to bring people in from different cultures and diversity, and then to be able to teach through the art of their culture is pretty awesome. I do the same thing. But they're like the budget, they really wanted help with just like, the guests that come in, they wanted to pay for help with that, the supplies, like school supply or the art supplies, which is not cheap at all, let me tell you. And then like printing, or even just be able to have help with transportation, like a gas card to get families to get there. I wish there was like a bus or something I can just go pick kids up or drop them off or whatever. But to be able to have help with that would be pretty good. They have some contributions, like 2 individual ones, but then they have found like pending, which as I hear this happens when you get grants and stuff, but like Epic and Costco's and different people are willing to help. You have like they got public grants as well. They also have many things that are done in kind, which is very nice. So, and I feel like this is such a community event that is pretty impressive, that to be able to learn about it and then read from parents of how this impacted their kid, like that was kind of nice to know. I feel like being able to teach kids at a low, like when they're younger, as the art just raises up, it keeps them going and it doesn't stop. When it comes to, their expenses is high, but they also have like, people helping as well. So I thought that was really good. I just finding the joy that's at the end of it when they all get together and then the kids get to see their masterpieces at the end of it is just pretty nice. And I think it's just a really good grant, a really good proposal. I hope you guys help me out with this. I love the support of them and even the resumes and just the talk. And just I think it's really good. It was written very well. I've never seen a proposal before, so it was detailed. So I'm like learning. So, but I think it was really good.
Terrific. Thank you. Robin.
Awesome. Thanks, Desiree. Yeah, I highlighted a lot of the same things that you did, like what really stood out to me. So I appreciated that they have a particular focus on introducing young artists to BIPOC artists so that students are seeing themselves reflected in the art that they're studying. So kind of really challenging that traditional canon we teach of the classics and really broadening that, along with complementing it with the guest artists who provide new cultural perspectives and new methods of expression. So it's also not, it must be a 2D painting, like they get into so much more, it seems. For their population served, they do bilingual programming to increase accessibility to the families. So it kind of starts to minimize that language barrier. The demand is there. When we talk about public value, they've noted that they're currently at maximum capacity with a waiting list. And they spell out that additional funding is critical to serving more students. Like they're doing what they can with what they've got. They can do more if they can get more support. The program aspires to raise the self-esteem and self-worth of the students. So there's also, besides the artistic expression of it, there's also the social and emotional pieces of it that's really valuable. They have strong intended outcomes. Like, I know we have a very limited amount of space to articulate some of that, but they're providing an artistic outlet. They're providing role models. Kids are seeing themselves reflected in the art. Their staff is diverse and reflective of their student body. I love the celebration of the work, the end of the year gallery show, giving kids like a real artist experience. That matters a lot. And they're creating this warm and welcoming space. So the kids that are participating feel valued. It's not just like, you're going to go here for like babysitting with some art. Like there's a real intrinsic value to it. More than half of their students participate for more than 2 years. So, and especially with the age group they work with and how interests will shift very, very quickly, for kids to lock in on something like that for a long time speaks to the value. They've got that exceptional corporate support. I appreciate that they're paying their staff a competitive wage, which they thoughtfully included in their narrative in the budget notes. And the strong letters of support, like what really shone through that is they speak to the transformative nature of the experience. So lots and lots of strengths to the application. When I make notes for opportunities for improvement, mine is a small one, and it's really more of a grace note that if there was a way to see a bit of the artwork produced with families' permission, that would be a lovely thing to add to, like, look at what these kids have created over the course of the year. But like I said, that's a grace note only. It's a really strong application on its face.
Excellent. Any other comments from the viewers? Yeah.
One more thing. I even love the fact that they pay their high school student interns. So for any kid that is like willing to want to be in like an art teacher or something, they're learning already. And then to get paid well, like when she was saying about the payment, I'm like, I want to work here. Like this would be great because that's a good, and then you're doing something that you love. These teachers are not like, I'm out here just doing it and I have to go and babysit. They're actually doing something that they love. And if they did have a gallery to show, like just showing the different process of what is going on with these kids, or even some of just letters from the kids about this is a very good thing. Because if there's a waiting list, it's amazing that you even be able to be in it for 2 years. Like just, and it needs to expand for sure.
Thank you, Desiree. YJ.
Yeah, this is just super minor. I just wanted to make sure from the previous applications, the expense covered by the grant is a smaller portion of the cash expense amount. Is that correct? Because I did see that in this application, they had put like the covered by the grant and then the expense amount as a separate and then the total expense. But then in other applications, I did notice that like the expense covered by the grant was like a smaller portion of that cash expense amount. Does that make sense?
I'm not completely clear. I don't know if Augusta can help answer that question, but for the documentation that I have, it's 11% of the total. So it's actually a little bit on the higher side. for other applications?
Think I get what you're saying, and sometimes like the total cost of something is more than what the grant is. So you can have partial application of grants. So say there's $10,000 in artist fees, they could say we're asking Dean Arts for 5,000, and some combination of their other funding is covering that other 5,000 for a total expense of 10. Is that what you're getting at? Like it's not 100% of the grant amount?
Yeah, I guess I was just a little confused because, like, for example, I know we just submitted the previous, but the future ones, you'll notice that, like, if you go into the budget line, it says expense covered by grant. And so if you look at the artistic honoraria, it's 1,200, and then the cash expense amount is $0, and then the total expense is 1,200. Whereas in previous applications, it was like covered by the grant was 1,000, for example, cash expense amount was 2,000, which means it was like 50% of that cash expense amount. So I don't know, like this is just getting like oddly like not nitpicky, but it's like, okay, like I guess for me, I'm like reviewing, I'm like, oh wait, what's the like correct way to like write this? Because I've seen different applicants do it different ways, or
Do it different ways.
they'll be inconsistent a little bit. So that's just something to like take a note, maybe for like communicating how to write the budget. I wasn't sure what was correct or not.
Yeah, I can jump in with, I think, so for Dane Arts eligibility, the only part where that 50% comes into play is the total budget. So they can't ask for more than 50% of their total project budget, but we don't mind if in the breakdown for individual line items, it doesn't have to be a 50-50 match. I think that's what you're asking, right?
Yes, yeah, that's super helpful.
Yeah, so we don't mind how they break down the budget as long as each of the line items are an eligible request, which these are. So it's just the overall budget has to be 50% or less of a Dane Arts request, can't exceed overall. Does that make sense?
Yes. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments on this project?
Yeah, just really quick. I was gonna say, I think this grant and this organization are very conscious of their audience and of their participants, and the thoughtfulness really shines through. I mean, we mentioned the gas cards, which is, that is something on top of above and beyond that you'd have to do, especially if they have a wait list, like they could say, if you can't get here, you can't be in the program, but they reach out to that demographic. They know that demographic. Same thing with snacks. A part of their budget goes towards snacks, and in the narrative, it says you can't create art on an empty stomach. Like they're working with kids, they know that. And that's an important part. They see them as a whole child and not as just a participant. And then even in their evaluation, I do love the data, and so I kind of laughed at this when they were like, we try not to bog down our families with undue paperwork, which is a big barrier to a lot of those BIPOC families, and is just being overwhelmed with paperwork and kind of that bureaucracy stuff. And so I thought that was very conscientious. Despite them saying that we try not to do that, having that stat in there, like a real number that more than 50% of our students participate for 2 or more years, just that number, again, like I love that, if other grant applications had just that little, like, let's include that number, give me a number. But I also think that having a number, great, and then that number was great, having that longevity, and having continued participation over multiple years is great for the student, great for the organization, and is showing that they are really making an impact and people are enjoying it. They're coming back. So yeah, I thought there were just a few details in this one that really shine through for me, and I think they're very thoughtful.
So, thank you, everybody. Please go ahead and submit your scores.
Thanks, everybody. I've received the scores.
Thank you. All right, the next project we're reviewing is identified as number 26477 in the category of music. It's Madison Bach musicians. They're asking for $5,100, which is about 12.4% of their total budget. And YJ, as primary reviewer, we'll start with you.
Awesome. So yeah, so the Madison Bach musicians, it's their 15th annual Baroque holiday concert on December 13th, and it's Christmas with the Baroque Masters. And it's an outreach event December 12th for Madison West High School. So essentially they're having their Christmas concert on the 13th, and then an additional concert or outreach event with Madison West High School on the day prior. And so this event will be hosted at the First Congregational Church. And yeah, the estimated size is about 900 people, and tickets are $40. There's such a wide range of age demographics. One like thing that I find really unique about this component is like there's two components, like one where they're visiting West High School and engaging with the choir and orchestra students. And so those students will perform on the 12th with the Madison Bach musicians. And then Bella Voce, which is a choir from Evanston, Illinois. And then also on that day, students will have the opportunity to have a Q&A and engage with professional musicians. And then also on the 13th, that second component, there will be a lecture by the director giving, music and cultural context. And in terms of, sorry, I definitely did not like, I just have general notes, but yeah, so in terms of like the marketing, yeah, so, sorry, I'm like losing my place. Yeah, okay. So like in terms of how they intend to measure this outcome, they will have like an evaluation, and also they partner with different organizations to review the concert, and you'll kind of see that in a lot of their supplemental materials. And so yeah, they do end up, receiving emails and letters from the audience, and so a lot of that qualitative data, and then also feedback from the students and teachers, which is great to engage that second component. And in terms of the budget, everything looks quite good. I do appreciate their conservative ticket sales. They're estimating, I think, yeah, so based off the calculation, it's like 18,800, divide that by the ticket sales price 40. So they're expecting like 470 when the audience capacity is 900. So, about 50%. And I guess just a question that I had was, how many West High School students will participate? And then just a small feedback for the letter of support. I think they could have been stronger. They weren't really letters. They were mainly just like an overview of the project details. And I think like in the future, perhaps like including a letter from a student or a teacher would have been really illuminating, especially for that component of reaching out to the students and having them involved in this production.
Terrific. Thank you. Megan.
Yeah. Thanks, YJ. I totally agree with everything you mentioned. The first thing I had on my list was questioning how much of their ticket sales, like what percentage that was of their revenue. So I appreciate that you did the math because that was really helpful. I was not going to do the math. But yeah, because I like that realistic. We talked about that. I like the connection to the high school, that relationship that they have. I do feel like I could have, I think they have room to maybe have some additional touch points or some additional community connections, or it felt like in terms of that rubric item of like community partners, I felt like that was lacking a little bit. But I love that they do have that really strong connection to that high school. It seems like they've got a continuing partnership there. And then I'm sorry if I just keep saying my similar feedback, but I think for groups that have an annual program, I know it's different every year, but this is a group that's been around for a while and they do a similar concert every year. I just think their supplemental materials, I was looking for it, so correct me if I missed it, but their supplemental materials mostly include clips of their performances, which is lovely, and images. But I would love to see some evidence from how they plan to evaluate from a previous one. You know, they show clips from previous performances. And so, you know, we obviously accept looking at previous years as part of their supplemental for the application for this year. So I just think if you really are evaluating the way that you say that you're planning to evaluate, then you should have maybe a document or a survey or, you know, a graph, something that says, you know, we did do this evaluation last year, that worked. Here is what, you know, and even, you know, they wanted to expand on that, they could be like, here's our evaluation last year, here's the feedback we took, this is how we implemented it, and this is how, you know, I'd love to see that because, you know, for these groups that are applying year after year, and there are quite a few. I mean, there's a question that says, is this, are you first time applicant? Most of them are no. And is it an annual program? Most of them are yes, at least of the ones we're looking at today. So I think not to hold them to too much of a higher standard, but I think it would be really great to get that information.
Thank you. Any other comments from the reviewers? Yeah, Robin, please.
If others want to jump in first too, it doesn't always have to be me. But yes, I thought the strengths of the application was that I appreciate how the project connects youth performers with professional or seasoned performers. And the inclusion of that season brochure was a smart use of the supplemental materials because the narrative of the event paints a picture of kind of the flow of the content. But as I believe it was Megan was saying, the other supplemental materials felt less relevant to the particular project. And I would like, in general, for everyone, for supplemental materials to be more specific to the project and to really kind of paint a picture of that. I think there are some opportunities for improvement, especially since this is an applicant who we typically will see just about every cycle. And I know I have shared this feedback in the past, but I think their outcomes and their assessments are not very strong. What they list for outcomes are hard to measure, and the assessment plans are really very passive. It's things like, we expect to get reviewed by the isthmus and things. We will get comments and emails, but there's not a lot of like direct solicitation of feedback and assessment. And I think that would really be helpful, especially to paint the picture of like, we understand the general health of this organization, their longevity, but what about this particular project merits continued funding from Dane Arts? What makes it special? What makes it important? I would love for them to include at least a little information about the live streaming element of the program. It's part of the budget and it is part of the ask of this grant, but it's not detailed in the grant narrative anywhere. And it does add accessibility to the program. So I think that's something to highlight, even if it's a simple summary of it in the supplemental materials or a mention in the community audience served that we reach X number of additional people through live streaming. The first letter of support tells a lot about the what of the event. Like it literally is summarizing the what details. I would like to hear more about the why. Why is the project significant? Why does it merit arts funding? The second letter was so brief and it just really wasn't very emphatic about the value of the experience. So that is one of those areas where this application could really be leveled up, is in those letters of support.
Desiree, did you comment?
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And like if they were doing things with a high school, at least like kind of survey like have letters from a high school kid who was a part of it so that they know how important it is for them to be with this. It's really awesome that they like the video that you see of what's going on is really nice to see that. But it's like you don't know, like, so how does this work? Like, is there a QR code they can scan and review it so you have the stats? Because I'm learning you got to have some stats on this stuff. So but it's like if you knew why we're doing it, it's like there's always a why behind the what. So you got to know why you're doing it. And if they're annual, hopefully they actually hear the reviews and they do so that when they come up next year, they will actually have all of this done and ready at some point, just like for, you know, comments. But I think if you're participating with a school, you know, principals know about it, teachers who are the music teacher, have them write a letter or something, or, you know, because it's kind of cool to have professionals come in and kids get to ask questions with professionals. Like that's rare. So, but to hear from students would be really good.
Excellent. Any other comments?
I was just going to say that having come from a journalism background and having worked in an environment for a few years where it became less so about what the journalist thinks the audience needs to hear and but rather how what our analytics tell us that our audience wants to hear. Arts coverage, particularly in the Madison area, is not something that's popular with the common person, according to, I used to work at the State Journal. So for this project to rely on critiques is a little bit unrealistic in the context of this particular society that we live in, increasingly digital, increasingly AI. So yeah, I agree with what everybody said here, but I also, think that they need a more specific or a different metric for measuring the success of this project because, unfortunately, art critiques and things like that are slowly going away in the Madison area.
Thank you, Emily. All right, go ahead and please score and submit.
All right, all the scores have been received. Thanks, everybody.
Sure. Thank you. Okay, the next project application is identified as number 26509. It's the dance category. It's the Hmong Family Society as the organization. They're asking for $5,250, which is a little over 11% of their total budget. Emily, as first reviewer, your comments, please.
Yes. So right off the bat, I thought that this project was clearly defined to its purpose. I like some of the history that was provided. So the Hmong dance program started in 2013, now serving 50 students aged 5 to 23. I like how this project seeks to preserve Hmong culture by teaching language through songs, history through movement, and the significance of textiles through costumes. This program was created because the applicant says she witnessed Hmong Americans losing connection to their cultural traditions. Now with 3 young daughters, she says, I'm even more motivated to preserve our heritage and for future generations. My goal is to enhance our dance program by incentivizing volunteer coaches, maintaining affordable quality programming, and empowering dancers to become cultural bearers through teaching and leadership opportunities. So on its face, I think it has a really good purpose. I think the project demonstrates creativity, innovation, and uniqueness. I think my confidence in this applicant's talents and skill sets is pretty confident until I get to the part where it lays out the budget. So Anne just pointed out that it goes over just over a little bit of a little bit. It goes a little bit over 11%. I also saw that the applicant has not sought out various sources of earned income and contributed funds for the support. And I did see that some of the dancers in this program would have to pay for their own expenses. I would prefer that be covered by some kind of a sponsor or something just to make this a little bit more accessible, considering that this dance project is to preserve and bolster Hmong culture in Wisconsin. I thought the applicant had a decent plan for how it would measure and evaluate the outcomes of this project. But yeah, overall, I thought it was a it was a pretty strong application until I got to the budget aspect of it. So that's my very sort of brief overview. Public speaking is not my forte.
You're doing great.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you. But yeah, so that's essentially my evaluation of the application.
Thank you, Emily. Desiree, comments?
She did amazing. I agree. I love the fact that it has to preserve culture. And it comes through her own family to start it. That's how usually it does, and it keeps going. The budget, like, we're basically would be paying for the coaches, and then the students would have to pay for their own stuff. I wish there was a way where, more money or more help could come through for, like, contributions from, I mean, somebody else, or maybe even in kind for some of the coaches, that you don't have to pay as much, because this is a thing that's trying to for your culture and build up families and stuff. But hopefully they found more money, but I thought it would help more for the actual participants and not just the coaches. Like, it went for them, and a little of it went for like space and rental, but most of it was just for the coaches and not for the students. But the one thing that I did love, which just took me overboard and all, was the little girls that was dancing in the video. I said, I feel like you can get money from anybody if you just put kids up and stuff. And it was just to see a dance that, with them doing their heritage, it was just pretty impressive. I love that. But yeah, I think the same thing. They were mostly videos. I didn't really see a lot of like anybody else speaking on the support. I don't know if it may be like a need to be translator. I don't know, just of why, like, why should we do this? Like, I understand why we should, but if it's done before, is there anybody that's going to talk about it? So, but it's a very good idea. I just hope that there is, there's a letter of, the letter of support. But it's just like, it's not as, I thought it would be more for the actual students or the participants and not for just the coaches. But it's still a good thing, and especially the history for it, and then helping a community bring community together.
Okay. Comments? Any other comments from the viewers? Yes, YJ.
Yeah, one thing I noticed actually in the budget narrative, they mentioned getting a donation from American Family Insurance along with parent-led fundraising. And so I think, like, if that's the case, you can certainly put that into your project income or the budget, right? Like, and you can say pending, and even like the parent-led fundraising, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, you can put that in individual contributions or gifts. So yeah, like I noticed that like there are other sources of money that are coming in, and you put that in the budget narrative, but you can also make sure to put that into the actual like budget items. That way it makes it more clear that it's like, okay, yeah, you have sought other sources of funding. And yeah, I also at first when I saw like the costume cost, I was like, oh my gosh, those are very expensive. And then when I clicked on the video, I'm like, okay, this makes a lot of sense. So just small comment there. Very beautiful supplemental videos. So yeah, thanks.
Thank you. Any other comments, please? Robin, please go ahead.
Yeah, I struggled with this one at first because to me, at the face value, it seemed like more of an operational grant request versus a project specific one. Even though if I kind of put it side by side with Little Picassos, and I know we don't benchmark against the two, Little Picassos is sort of a full year thing too, but this one just left me more confused by like the lack of specificity and detail. So I was weighing back and forth of, should our perspective be about the value to the greater Dane County community, who may only interact by seeing performances at an event? And it was very unclear in this application how many points of interaction there would be within Dane County for performances. It spoke to like statewide, but to understand where that was, or is the public value in the experience of the dancers themselves? So should we be looking at this as internal versus external? Because I think there's value to both of those. They've definitely shown growth over the last 3 years, going from 12 to 50 participants. But the financial picture was where I really got stumped as well. So the only income was from the applicant and the dancer. So that's where I figured out that $3,000 that's listed as from the applicant is actually her AmFam match that she gets from her employer. So what's in the budget narrative is just labeled differently up above. But I was like, where is the $3,000 listed here? And I was like, oh, that's what it is. The big thrust of this grant appears to be seeking funding to compensate the coaches who had previously volunteered their time. But for me, it was also hard to understand if some of the board members listed on their board summary are also the coaches who would be getting compensated by this grant. So there's kind of a lot of muddying of who the personnel is and who's receiving the compensation. But when you look at their financial documents, it indicates a variety of funding sources. So there's fundraising in there, there's sponsorship, there's donations. None of that translates up to the budget summary or really into the budget narrative. So that could be a better way to just paint their overall financial picture, which might leave us less struggling to figure out how to support this grant. Their letters of support were strong, speaking to the value to the contribution to community wellness, and the preservation of culture. Their outcomes for their participants and their assessment plans for that seem to be pretty solid and linked to each other. And I appreciate that it speaks to how traditional dance plays an important role in preserving culture and tradition. But again, the application felt more like an operations ask. I would like to know of that attendees number where they talked about 5,000 to 7,000 people. How many of them are actually seeing performances at an event? And how many of them are social media followers? Because in how they described it, it's some mix of both. And just the financial picture was my biggest stumbling block with this proposal.
Thank you. Yes, Wyche.
Yeah, and I also just want to add that for me, I read it as they had mentioned there's 10 plus performances annually, and they mentioned free events and performances. So I think like for me, I was like, oh, I could totally see how this could like enrich the community, and they're like totally accessible. So I just want to say like I really appreciate that. But yeah, in terms of it's like, well, how many people are going to these events? When are the events? I think all of that would be really helpful information.
And I think I'm actually glad that they did this because this is the first time they've ever done it. So they've never done did a grant application. So maybe that is why the budget looks the way it does, because they didn't know you could put that up at the top and so that you can see everything. So maybe they'll just need with the comments on this, that if they did it again, they will be able to have more help with another grant whenever they do one.
Definitely. And that's the perspective I try to bring. And sometimes we'll like articulate that of any feedback I give is in service to an improved application next time, because you have to start somewhere. And you can tell some grants that we look at are written by a professional grant writer who knows how to hit all of the metrics. So for this group, hearing some of the feedback, hopefully getting some funding this year, and then just coming back next cycle with an even stronger application. In a couple of years, they could be one of those seasoned applicants where they're like, boom, boom, boom. But I don't want them to get dinged unnecessarily, just to know that a better financial picture makes a stronger case for getting funding. But the value of the program and, especially the cultural aspects and the ability to involve youth in the arts are definitely a strength of the application.
Yeah. And I just want to hitchhike on that. So when we get these comments, it's really helpful. So what can we do on the application in terms of the questions, the formatting stuff to actually, also help make an improvement in terms of the quality of the application? Because there's things we can do as well and how we ask the questions, how it's structured and stuff. So we take all of these comments to heart, and we review what you're saying to see what other changes we can be making on the application form itself.
And really letting first-time applicants know that the sessions that get offered ahead of time can be super valuable.
Yes.
Like going in, walking through before you fill it out and submit it. Like those resources are offered, but just
Yes.
really leveling that up to folks of it can be to your benefit to go to one
Yes.
of those sessions and a walkthrough or to look at samples of previous grants. To
Exactly.
be okay asking questions like first time is a first time. Let us help you sing the praises of your program.
Yeah, good point. Any other comments on this application? All right, go ahead and score. And submit. Okay, is everybody okay with just taking a 10-minute break? Would that be okay? All right, so it's 9:42, so can we say 9:52? 9:53? Okay, sounds great. We'll see you in 10 minutes. Mhm. Okay, this is a prompt group. Thank you so much, everybody. The next project is identified as number 26510. It's under the category of dance. The Madison Ballet is the organization, and they're asking for $5,000, which is a little over 6% of their total budget. And as first reviewer, Robin, your comments, please.
Great, thank you. So this program is intended to uplift and amplify the voices of women in dance by commissioning new works exclusively from female identifying choreographers. The initiative reflecting Madison Ballet's commitment to equity, innovation, and expanding the narratives that are told through ballet. It's an all-female choreographic showcase. It addresses a critical imbalance in ballet. Like, I thought this was a really strong statement to make, that while women often dominate on stage, they remain vastly underrepresented as choreographers. So they're trying to equalize that leadership backstage and on stage. They're commissioning world and Madison premieres that kind of challenge traditional perspectives, opening the art form to more, as they say, new and diverse storytelling. I did have to look up the event online, though, to understand a bit about how many performances and things. So a little bit on the event detail seemed a little gray for me. They're aiming to serve a diverse and inclusive audience. So historically, their audience has been about 80% white, primarily in that 35 to 64 demographic, and majority female. So they're speaking to wanting to expand outreach to engage more youth, community colors, and underserved communities. So once again, the question that bubbles up for me is, what's the how in all of that? What's the plan to actually do that? Their intended outcomes are looking at offering accessible ticket pricing, outreach performances, and some virtual content to remove barriers to attendance. But I didn't see a virtual content element in the project, unless I missed that somewhere if it was buried. They like to engage audiences through talkbacks, workshops, and interactive events to deepen the connections, and then to showcase both diverse artists on stage and behind the scenes. Evaluation, the plan was to track audience attendance and demographics to kind of measure some of their reach, gathering feedback through surveys, monitoring engagement in community partnerships, and then input from artists and collaborators to try and gauge creative growth and inclusivity. So lots of qualitative, a little bit of quantitative. Some of it seems a little bit spongy, so it would be nice to know a little bit more, but I also know that we've got some limited space. So again, that use of supplemental materials could really help paint the picture. They want the ways that they want to engage their audience. So they're looking at about 1,100 people over the course of the project, partnering with local schools and community organizations, and then targeting marketing and inclusive messaging across social media and then their local media. This is another one where they're projecting about 60% of the house for ticket sales. So I always mark that is prudent and reasonable. They have large confirmed support from AmFam, but there are no other public art grants that are listed. I thought they made generally good use of the budget narrative section. I'd like to see a bit more detail on the dancers' expenses, kind of listed as miscellaneous, because that's a $23,000 item. And then the flights and hotel item, it's not paid for by the grant, but would help us understand the total financial health of the project. Under their supplemental materials, I thought it was interesting that they share the actual data that the documents they need for this type of program. So the actual data, I just appreciated seeing that in the supplemental. I'd love to see some work samples or marketing samples included. I did appreciate the letter of support from a dancer and the impact that having this type of opportunity has on performers. Because that's sometimes something that gets missed in all of the letter of support options, is to understand that kind of intrinsic value. There's also a strong letter of support from one of the choreographers that speaks to the vital need to have spaces where their perspectives are not only welcomed, but celebrated. So that like whole level up to a celebration. Could balance out the letters of support with one that speaks to the public value from an audience perspective, which would just make the case that much stronger for this project. And I would also suggest including bios of the choreographers as key personnel, since that is so central to this project. To not have that listed as key personnel really felt like an unfortunate miss. I thought the overall strengths were The project actually addresses an identified deficit in the ballet world and like a data-driven deficit. They did good use of the budget narrative section, just build it out to paint the picture of the big expenses. Opportunities for improvement, I suggested providing a bit more project event info, like the number of performances versus just a range of dates, to describe those virtual elements, to consider that audience or patron letter of support, and then including the biographers. So like the project is really solid. The feedback is just how to level up the grant a little bit to paint a slightly broader picture.
Thank you. Megan.
Yeah, thanks, Robin. I don't know if I have much to add. I think the premise of like the the project being all female choreographers in the industry where all the dancers skew female and choreographers skew male, very captivating premise. I think Madison Ballet has a history of in this community of quality performances, and I think that shows through. I really have. I think it's a good proposal. The only thing I'll like reiterate that Robin did say is I was really jump scared by the in the line item in the budget is dancers expenses miscellaneous 23,000. I'm like, that's a big chunk to just like throw in a miscellaneous. Because I think that their overall budget is 80,000. So 23,000 is more than a quarter of their budget to just like, I don't know what that means. Like, like they have other things broken out. So I would just be curious what that is. So other than that, I think the rest of their breakdown, they have a really large grant from AmFam. They have that $25,000 from them. And realistic ticket sales, all sorts of things. So no other concerns. I think it was a good proposal, but that line item, I saw that, I was like, what?
Thank you. Comments from any other reviewers? Yes, YJ.
Yeah, I liked how they talked about including workshops, talkbacks, and interactive events. And I was just wondering if that, like, if there were any expenses that they account for those, like in the budget. And I don't know whether it's like appropriate or yeah, if it is necessary to include that. But yeah, I was just wondering, they did mention that other aspect, and I was wondering if there was any, when those are occurring, is it before or after the performance, whether there's any expenses related to those, or if it was just kind of like, yeah, we might do this.
Any other comments? Okay, please go ahead and score and submit.
All the scores have been received. Thanks, everybody.
Okay, the next project is identified as number 26517 under the category of music. The organization is Oakwood Chamber Players. They're asking for $5,250, which is a little over 8.4% of their total budget. Desiree, as first reviewer, your comments, please.
Okay, so this was they're asking what, like you said, it starts in August, so it already started, and it's supposed to end in March of this year. There's five different community events, and then but there's 10 projects, so they're in different places. So you got the Oakland West, the Oakland East, and then the Art Lit Slab. The tickets are $25 and then $5 for youth, like for the youth or students. They are partnering with the Wisconsin Youth Orchestra. So to be able to put like the digital marketing on the wall so that other people can see it, they're going to give them like 8 tickets for staff and students that are there. they're bringing in a lady. I'm not even know what her last name is, but I'm gonna call her. Her name is Stacy. She is a pianist, and she's gonna enter into the ensemble during the concert series, which is in January and March. There is like it's a 10 projects, but there's like different dates for them. And there's five, like they're estimating 400 people in the audience. The majority of their people are seniors right now. And so them getting into the art lit lab, they want to expand to get more families, BIPOC population, and the younger people into it. With them, with what they're doing, they want to represent the BIPOC population and women composers, because when you ask about any composer, the most people you say like Mozart or Beethoven, and usually it's a guy. So there's not a lot of information about women composers and stuff. So they want to be able to find those gems that mostly nobody knows about, and then bring that out so that people can also be able to learn more about that. And they're having it at the Lit Lab to make it a stronger presence in the Madison area. They have like 2 letters of recommendation. Like the one said that it was like done on 2024. So I'm not sure if that was a recommendation before, or they didn't change the date. I don't know. But the other one was really good because she kept talking about how there wasn't, like, even though it's everything small, they need to expand, and the different things. That is how this chamber is very good to be able to teach more, and you learn the history of music and everything. So I really enjoyed that that letter of recommendation or support. They had their 40th anniversary circus celebration, and I think it was like in it was June. It wasn't that long ago, like a couple months ago. And they have videos of it on the end, which was pretty interesting. I've never seen anybody do orchestra music with clowns spinning on circles and stuff in the back. That was just pretty impressive. I feel like if more kids saw that, they would love to see this. And then even for kids who are part of an orchestra would like to participate in something like this, because that would be something that they would enjoy. I feel like with them doing the success of the circus, it's going to bring in more families and all of that. So having what they're doing is very, very, very well. When it comes to the budget, it seems like the highest prices is for the honoraries that are coming and the guests, but they have like the promotions and marketing. But then at the same time, they have like more like marketing for at the bottom. They do have foundation. The foundation for Oakland Foundation is confirmed to give money, which is amazing. And but they don't have that many in kind. They have like print ad design, which is pending. So a lot of it has to do with the marketing, but most of the money is going to honoraries. But it sounds good. They've done it before. This is not their first rodeo. But it does seem like something that's really good, in the nice way that like them bringing it into the Lit Lab and wanting to expand in Madison, and then also bringing in more families and being able to partner with the youth Wisconsin Symphony Orchestra is like pretty impressive, to get children involved and stuff. And I feel like this is like a really, really good way to do that. When I thought, like, when you're in the budget narrative, you should kind of explain what the money is doing. So I mean, it talks about investing into like digital marketing and stuff, but it doesn't say like what, like, for an honorary, is it just for them? Do they live here? Are they staying here? Or is it for the hotel expense or anything like that? I don't know. It just says, or is it just that payment for it? So if it was like kind of more detailed of what you're going to do with it, with the especially like the higher prices, would have been kind of nice. But they do talk about what, the guests coming in for the season, and all of the things, but it's just, the amount of it and pricing. But I do know for sure, like, instruments are very pricey. They are not cheap at all. So they did a very good job. And I actually thought it was really good.
Terrific. Thank you. YJ.
Yeah, I agree with everything that Desiree said. And in addition, I really loved how cohesive the narrative was and just the numbers that back it up, right? Like this gave an image of we've had success in the past and we'd love to expand to new audiences. And that's even evident in like their, I believe in their metrics section, they said we measure data from like new audience data to people who have already attended. And they even mentioned a buy one, get one coupon where you can invite new people. So I thought everything was just so cohesive in addition to the letter of support, even talking about that new expansion. So really excited to see how this turns out this year and see if these initiatives have come into fruition.
Terrific. Any other comments?
Just shouting out the specificity of the how they plan to evaluate. Loved. Excellent.
Excellent. Robin.
Sorry, I'm on like 3 screens, so my cursor likes to get lost sometimes. One of the strengths that I highlighted was I appreciated the applicant's future forward perspective. So they talk about their original roots in providing a professional yet approachable musical experience for the elderly and the homebound, which in and of itself is a fantastic niche. They're now looking at how to reach further into Dane County and to cultivate new audiences. I think the letters of support they have for this project are ones that if we were ever able to provide samples of like what you want in a letter of support, these would be good models for that. I liked how they use their budget breakdown to show the split between like the Oakwood based and the arts and lit lab shows. So there's a way to understand the totality of the budget, but also some specificity of the location. And they got some significant funding from individual contributors, which to me speaks to the health and the vibrancy of a program. If you've got a lot of little fish that add up to a big number, that really matters. So I think the only recommendation I had for them, like an opportunity for improvement, would be to continue to seek additional and varied types of financial support for that long-term stability that they're really trying to grow.
Okay. Any other comments? Okay, please finalize your score and submit.
Scores have been received. Thanks, everybody.
Okay, the next project is identified as number 26525 under the category of local history. Organization is Race and Place Coalition. They're asking for $5,250, which is about a little more than 11.4% of their total budget. And Emily, as first year reviewer, your comments, please.
Yes, absolutely. So right off the bat, when I was sorry about that notification. Right off the bat, when I was kind of reading about I appreciate what this project is trying to do. However, I found the description, like, what is the project? Why are you creating this project? I found that to be a little bit vague. It says a citywide celebration of Madison history, culture, and community where residents contribute place-based memories to an archive of local history using a digital story mapping platform. Participants will share their finding at outdoor pop-up events aligned with America's 250th. So great, awesome. I think that's really innovative, but you know, it's just, it doesn't necessarily say like, you know, what, like, is there a sort of focus that they're trying to achieve with this? It just says it's just a citywide celebration of Madison history. Like what kind of history? And then later on in the application, it talks about it seems to want to focus on Native American history and things like that. And so I would have just appreciated that to be part of the initial description of the project. However, I think this is really innovative and unique, despite that description. I think the project does an all right job of identifying the intended audience as well as community collaborators. They have a decent plan for how they will measure and evaluate their impact. And I thought the project did a good job of outlining a few
different sources. They outline a variety of different sources for funding. They got Epic Systems to fund the project, which I think is really cool. But yeah, other than the vague description, I thought this was a relatively decent application. So yeah.
Thank you, Emily. Robin, comments, please.
Yeah, Emily, I would concur. I really got lost in the weeds of trying to understand what this project was based on how the grant was written. It's got a very like academic vibe to it, and I had a hard time swimming through trying to find the plain language understanding of how to really involve like the average citizen of Dane County in this, and how it was like the vibe I'm getting is it feels like it's more than a Dane County thing, and just trying to get through the weeds of what that was. They have, at least within our area, some interesting locations and places that are involved. But the intended outcomes and stuff, I really got lost on. So one of the questions that I jotted down was the value of like the user interface platform part of the project seems to be intended to have a use far beyond this project. So is it an appropriate use of these funds to get that reach beyond Dane County? Like, I think you could look at it as a value add, but also is it more of a means to an end kind of a thing? The financial plan, they have structured it, they state so that there can be support for a streamlined version if they don't reach their budget goals. The additional contributions line description is vague, so more details, please, was what I jotted down. They do have significant pending foundation and corporation support. The budget section notes says that the grant request focuses on the first phase of the project to develop local tools and assemble a team. So that's where I'm also lost in how like the average person in Dane County is going to interact with it. The second letter of support speaks to a local nature and a grassroots focus of this project, making it somewhat unique. I had some questions about the Dane County relationship. So the proposer lists a Rhode Island address on the board of directors roster. The address on the application seems to be a mix of like Rhode Island and Wisconsin markers. And only one member of the board of the directors is Dane County based. Like they're pretty far flung for a project looking for Dane arts stuff, but they're also one of the only board of directors that lists the locations of their folks. So that could be a critique for other people too, but it just kind of stood out to me in trying to get an understanding of how this fits into kind of the milieu of Dane arts. I appreciate the collaboration with First Nation residents and marginalized communities, because the applicant notes that these local histories have been left out of a lot of mainstream collections of history. We're only kind of scratching the surface of getting caught up on anything besides like a white European focus of your local histories. You look at a lot of what gets collected and these things are just left out. The additional contributions line description was vague under opportunities for improvement. Clear up that confusion about the board of directors rostering. The narrative of the application just doesn't give me a good sense of the project structure or scope as a layperson. So I got lost in there. Maybe other folks are teasing something better out of it, but I just had a hard time thinking about how to justify funding for a project where I couldn't take what's given to us and give you like the snapshot version of, yes, this is how we make it fit.
Thank you. Yes, YJ, please.
Yeah, so I definitely have a lot of questions about this project. I did go into the supplemental resource and I was like clicking on the digital map platform, and like part of the metrics I think could be, you know, how many visits do you have on your digital map platform? You know, you could maybe grab the analytics of, you know, who in Dane County is using this, how many people are visiting. So that could be part of your project success metrics. And then also I noticed like in the budget, there was a calculated, you know, subscription to the mapping platform. And I was just wondering like, how much does that cost and who will be purchasing this? So like, how did they get that number in terms of money they're getting from that? And then also, it would be really nice because I know that like this project mentions, you know, public art, talk educational sessions, and outdoor pop-up events. So it would be really nice to see supplemental materials, including all those different types of events so that it's like more concrete rather than like this like theoretical, a lot of things are going on.
Great, thank you. Any other comments? Megan?
Yeah, I think I actually really enjoyed this grant. It was fascinating to me. I think there were a couple moments when I first started reading it that it was tricky. I think it's so different from the rest of the grants that we look at. One, because it's not an annual program, it's not performance-based, which most of the ones we're looking at today are, and it's not in the categories we're normally looking at. It's not like dance, music, visual art. And so I think there was just like a shift of my mindset where I had to be like, what is this? And I have to admit, I had to read through the whole thing, and then I looked at the supplemental materials and saw those maps, and then it kind of like clicked for me, and then I reread it. And so I actually think it's a really cool project. I'm also like bolstered in my confidence by their partners. I mean, their partners, City of Madison, Aldo Leopold Center, multiple libraries, those are reputable partners, and definitely ways to get reach. Ho Chunk Nation is another one. Key Madison neighborhoods and cultural groups, that could be more specific, but they have several partners that bolster my confidence in this project. I also think that digital tools like this are super fascinating. And I think there is an element of like, we don't, it's kind of unknown, we don't know what that looks like. So that's why I think those images helped. But I loved when they talked about, they used a phrase like creating this layered history. And then they also talked about outcomes, how this is kind of a foundation and how this can be the building ground for like a long lasting project. I mean, in this year, they want to do the pop-ups and really get it like founded and get this project set up. But in theory, these layered histories where people are marking different events and different occurrences and items in different locations can continue into perpetuity or continue, hopefully. I think that's their goal, sounds like. So I thought it was super unique. And I thought it was an aspect that we don't often see.
Yeah.
It sounded fun. It sounded like something that, if that's your thing, not fun for everybody, but not every grant is fun for everybody. But, for history people, for these groups, I think it's a really great way for people to understand the history of the city and get those experiences. So just in terms of like enjoyment of reading the grant, and it was tricky just in terms of like context. But I think overall the project sounds really interesting to me, and I feel that they are on their way to a good project.
Thank you, Megan. Any other comments? Yeah, Desiree, please.
Just like Megan or everyone else, when I first read it, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna have to read this again because I'm not understanding this at all. But then when I looked at the map, that was pretty impressive. Like you can have stories and pictures and it layers, how she's saying if this is a continuous thing, because if they start with Native Americans, we in Oregon, we were trying to look for the first African Americans in Oregon. So we were starting to just search for things. So there's so many different who were the first. If you're in the history, this would even be a helpful project for those who are in a history class to be a part of, or who wants to be history teachers or anything like that. With all of the help that they're getting, that's pretty impressive because it's still diversity. But yeah, the map, I had to literally go to the map. I think the only thing for me is, how is this going to help out with those who are very computer illiterate? For the older ones who are just like, I have no idea how to do any of this, how does that work for them? If there's a way to get that fixed for them, then it will all work. But trying to map everything out and try to find it, because there's so much history of so many people living in one house, and then you could just have the history of so many going into a house. It's great, and it would be great to expand it but it's like it's not like Rhode Island or wherever was not even here. It's like, where is it in the arts, like putting the arts together with it? But since it's so unique, it's a different form of art. because it's not really art, but it's the history of it. But then there's art in the midst of this. So I feel like it's a very different style of a grant. I didn't understand it, but I like pictures of things. So when you show me pictures, I'm just like, oh, this is pretty cool. But to figure out how to get it to work for people who are like, I have no idea what this is, how would you do that? Because it can't, if you have it just one, it can set and do it for a year, then it's done. But it doesn't seem like something that should be done for just a year. It's something that needs to progress, but start off small and then expand to it to make it bigger. Because once you get more into it, because you're going to then have more schools that might want to participate and more different, but you got to start somewhere. So it's good that they started somewhere, but it's a really good idea. And it's very, very innovative because I've never seen anything like that before. So it was pretty interesting.
Thank you. Any other comments?
I would just say that, yeah, this is one of those grants where it could benefit from using the supplemental materials section to its advantage. Like, is there a one pager or something that can boil down how this translates to the arts and how the average person could interact with it? Because there's little bits of pepperings of like moments where people are going to be able to gather and put things into the interface. So I think the things are there, and I'm sure some of it is when you're trying to do something that's not a fine arts application into a fine arts grant application kind of concept, sometimes that translational piece gets a little muddy. So that could be a good one of, here's how folks can interact with it. Here's the longevity afterwards. Here's how to make it publicly accessible. Because the principal applicant behind this has huge academic bona fides in this field and has done other like humanities projects that have received grant money. So like I have zero question that the knowledge behind this is solid. So being able to just paint a picture for folks of how that translates to an average citizen would be the one way to kind of bolster the strength. But it is cool to get into like new things where it's okay for it to be muddy and for us to be confused. And that feedback can be helpful in, you know, sharing this story. So like as they're gathering all of this funding and rolling into the execution phase, like I'd love to know how to be able to participate. Like I may not understand it, but it still seems intriguing.
Thank you.
I just want to point out, like, it is one of the categories. I mean, I know it's called Dane Arts and we're so comfortable with you know, music, dance, theater, and visual arts, but local history is right there. That's the category it's under. That's the category that it's offered. So it's not like it's out of place because it doesn't have a fine arts element. I think it's very appropriate for this grant cycle, even though it's not a more common one that we see.
Right. You want to go ahead and finalize and submit your scores?
Scores have been received. Thank you.
The next project is identified as number 26530. Category is Arts and Education. Organization is University of Wisconsin-Madison. Organization is asking for $5,200, which is just a little over 11% of their total budget. And Megan, as first reviewer, your comments, please.
Yeah. So this is Whoopensocker. And they are an artist, art in education residency program. They work with elementary school students in the Madison and Verona school district. And the premise of what they do is they help teach students to write stories and plays, I guess, and then perform them in vaudeville style shows. They really center student authored work, giving kids authorship and creative agency. the structure is kind of two parts. The first part is the residency phase, and they have over 30 teaching artists that guide students through the writing, improv, performance of these vaudeville style stories and plays. And then there's a performance phase. So the ensemble, the Whoopensocker ensemble performs those student stories for schools and public audiences. And they do that at the Madison Youth Arts Center, Verona Area School District, and Madison Circus Space. For audience, they estimate about 2,500. So really good reach there. They have obviously 70% youth and 30% adults or older adults. I thought that was even a bigger percentage of adults than I would think, because they seem very like primarily student based. They also plan to offer some free and discounted tickets for students and families. For their kind of impact, they want to professionalize student work and challenge the idea that real art is only able to be done by adults. They are promoting arts equity and access in schools that have increasingly less access to this type of art form. They mentioned that this type of like theater performance curriculum is really like has been phased out of schools, and a lot of schools don't have any sort of program like this. They also are working to include English language learners. And they also encourage the community, like families and the public, to come see these shows and celebrate the student creativity. They have a really cool partnership. They're working with PBS to create an online curriculum resource. So I actually checked out that website. It was linked in the supplemental materials. So super cool. I think that is a really good testament to the like strength and like how well developed this curriculum is that it's being shared on a much larger platform to be replicated by other groups. Their ensemble of teaching artists includes diverse actors, musicians, dancers, and improvisers. And they want that to reflect the Dane County diversity. Budget highlights. They have 11, so they're asking for about 11% from us, and they support 20% of artist stipends, and they have significant in-kind contributions, including their executive director salary and rehearsal space. For evaluation, they plan to track attendance for field trips and public shows, and they're targeting a 25% audience growth. I love that. They have a real number in there, and they are clearly looking to grow. And I think that's all I have. I thought it was a good proposal. I think it's unique to the community and clearly serves a need and a group that needs it.
Thank you, Megan. Desiree, second reviewer, your comments, please.
This was awesome. Like, the only thing that I was very sad about was like, wow, Oregon School District is not a part of this. That was like literally the only thing, because I was just like, this, like, there's like, it's able to teach kids to like them to be directors. Like, they can see you can do this. And I love when people can give to the community to build your community and not just go out and be like, oh, we need to find directors. You can have a little kid say on their resume, I directed my own written play, and they got it. And it's just very important. I love the videos or the photos, the family, the letter support was just like that. That's just amazing, just to be able to have so much support. I mean, PBS kids, come on, like, who has that? That's amazing. And then to be able to try to get it where you're doing it with different people who can't speak English, like, that's like, wait till the Hmong gets to write their own play and then do it. I mean, this is just pretty impressive. I love the videos. I just think this is just really something that needs to keep going. I hope they expand to all of Dane County. I might have to have a little chit chat with them, but this was a very, very good, very detailed, specific. I love that it's like diversity and those that are working it, bringing everybody in, but like to be able to do a play that is written by a kid. And then I think when we were talking about the percentages of the 30% of adults, I think that is from the staff that shows up, all of the teachers that's going to be showing up, all of the parents that comes for the kids. So that's why that number is a little bit higher. But man, this is going to be like so good. I like, this was number one. Like, I really love this one because I just love the fact that it just brings that, bringing diversity and bringing community together where everybody matters, and letting little kids know just because you're young, that doesn't mean you can't do it. Like, you got this, and we're going to support that. When you can support kids on their dreams and we don't abort their dreams, it's just an amazing thing. So I think this is just this is a great grant.
Excellent. Any other comments, please? Robin?
I'll leave space if YJ or Emily also want to hop in here too, but I really like what they spoke to about scaffolding risk taking for kids, because I think that's something that is a challenge to do a lot. And when it's not happening in the schools, you see how that plays out later on. So that supported risk taking is a really critical element in education in general and in the arts specifically. And I also like how they highlighted the value of multi-generational collaboration. So it's creating authentic performances, and there's this multi-generationality to it. I agree. I would love to see this all over Dane County. Like, if there was a way to help these things kind of grow, I think that's really an important thing. I can tell an educator wrote this grant because there are outcomes and assessment metrics that are realistic, they are measurable, they are participant focused. Like, this is one of those, like, if you want to highlight for folks how to be able to write strong outcomes and assessments in very few words, but still be able to grok it, that is definitely there. Financial plan, I thought it was interesting that a UW program is using an outside fiscal receiver, but maybe that's a UW Foundation thing, but that just kind of struck me as a little bit interesting. I am surprised to not see more foundation or corporate support or other arts grants. So that's possibly a future opportunity for them, especially as UW continues to expand like corporate underwriting in other areas and programs. This could be one of those that should really be asterisked for a growth opportunity if there's that support to help lift it up. I thought the Lincoln Elementary team support letter was so wonderful and so project specific that it spoke to the outcomes and the values. There was something a little bit odd about the Stevens Elementary letter of support, because there seems to be like a sentence tacked on at the bottom that's in a different font with no punctuation. And I was just, it seemed weird. It could be a PDF formatting thing, but something to clean up next time, because it looked odd in how it landed in the application. But I think the real strength of the project, and like the summary section I write, is this program has a powerful statement of purpose. Theater for kids is often simplified, written from an adult perspective, or not treated as serious or professional work. As the parent of a theater kid who's 14, seeing programs that really emphasize that kid focus and treating it as serious and important, that always sings to me. Because the future of the arts literally is with, growing young audiences from an early age through all of these different art forms. And performing arts education is largely disappearing from the elementary school curriculum. I know in MMSD, just based on my own personal parenting experiences, at least in where we are in MMSD, kids aren't even getting it until 8th grade. Like, if you're younger grade, you can go to whatever is put on as the middle school performance, but unless you're in some sort of after school club, it has really fallen out of the curriculum. So to see a program that can leverage that for at least a couple of school districts in the county, that feels really valuable. And when you look at the number of kids this program can touch for the ask being made of Dane Arts, it's about $2 per capita. If we've got about 2,500 folks that track through this program in some way, it's a really nominal amount per person that's impacted.
Any other comments, please? Okay, please proceed to finalize your score and submit.
I did also like that the director is the mayor of the Whoopensocker. Like there's a little bit of whimsy to this, so I love stuff like that.
I love how the program can be, they're going to move it to different places so that if they can't do it, then maybe they could help bring it in, because we have Oregon Straw Hat players, which we do a young one or for the younger kids, but we don't have anything actually in the school. So if they could get that program that can go into school, that would help a lot of different places who would love to keep that going.
Thanks, everybody. Got your scores.
The next project is identified with number 26533 under the category of music. Organization is the Madison Opera. Request is $5,250, which is a little over 6.6% of their total budget. And as first reviewer, YJ, your comments, please.
Awesome, thank you. So the Madison Opera is hosting a student matinee, which brings students to Overture Hall to enjoy a fully staged opera performance and an educational opportunity to learn about the opera production. So this event is occurring on April 22nd, 2026, and students will enjoy Mozart's romantic comedy, Così fan tutte. This production is basically filling a gap in providing students who might not have the opportunity otherwise to experience opera. And this also shows students the behind the scenes or behind the stage to show the technical elements of production, demonstrating that career in arts are not only limited to performers. And so this has a pretty wide reach of 1,000 students, and I really appreciate that they're reaching out to low income or geographically isolated schools for participation as well. And the cost is $5 per ticket, but it's also that cost can be waived for qualified schools through financial aid programs. And in terms of the evaluation metrics, I think it's very concrete, realistic. They're measuring it based off seats filled. And so that's a great way to measure success year to year, comparing that. And then also the post-show survey is a great way to engage feedback. And so this grant will go toward a portion of the artist fee. And just one thing that jumped out to me from the budget was that it showed they're expecting $5,000 from the ticket sales. So if $5 per ticket, that means 1,000 tickets are being expected to sold. So that's 100% of their audience. And normally I would be kind of suspicious about this, but if it's in the case that year to year, like they have filled 1,000 because they are making that outreach, then I think, yeah, that can be realistic for sure. So maybe that's just a question to ask, or maybe something that they can provide in the comments. So, or in the grant rather. And then, yeah, so they have individual contributions, trust, and corporate support along with endowment. And another piece of feedback, or maybe an area of opportunity, is the letters of support. It wasn't as clear to me if they were from student matinee events. And they weren't really letters. They were more so, to me, they looked like marketing material from just like reviews from patrons and news outlets. So I think like in the future, it'd be great to have like a letter of support coming from a student or a teacher, as this event is made for students. And yeah, I do appreciate, the supplemental video and also the educational study guide that is going to be shown to students before the event. So that's all for me.
Thank you. All right, second reviewer, Emily, comments, please.
All the points that I was going to hit on were already hit on. I thought this was I think this is a cool grant, and yeah, I think the only thing that wasn't mentioned that I want to see a little bit more of, I wanted to see just a little bit more varied sources of income. But other than that, yeah, I thought it was a pretty strong application overall.
Any other comments? Robin.
I appreciate it as like a strength of the project. They speak to making sure that the attendees, so the children going to this program, know that the arts belong to everyone and that is as important as the performance itself. And I appreciate that they contact new schools each season so that new teachers or new principals are aware of the resource. So they don't necessarily just rest on their laurels of, we know this school's going to send us this many kids, cool, done. I had the same challenge with the letters of support. They are not letters of support at all. They are pictures with pull quotes. And there's at least a couple of folks listed on there who at least one person I know personally who has enough knowledge of opera that if asked could probably write a real letter of support. But for an organization of this caliber, it should not. And with the number of schools that they've invited, the number of programs like this they've done over the years, it should not be difficult to get letters of support from any of the schools that have participated in the past. So that feels like a real miss on this application in particular. I would also like them to provide more specific and measurable outcomes of the project. It's really hard to tease those out from the narrative that's written around the outcome. They feel very sort of soft and diffuse, and that could really be strengthened. Like some of it is already there, talking about how students value the performance, things like that. It just needs to be more clearly articulated.
Any other comments? Great, please go ahead and finalize and submit your scores.
Right, scores have been received. Thank you.
The next project is identified as number 26562 under the category of music. The organization is acronym PEBOGA. Request is $5,000. It's a little less than 11.5% of their total budget. And as first reviewer, Robin, your comments, please.
Thanks. So this is a repeat applicant. Fall Gospel Fest is a one-day music event that serves as a platform for contemporary and traditional gospel music. And they feature a mix of national recording artists and local performers. So the program fills a niche that's not often offered in Madison. I think it is one of the only gospel events of its kind. There's not a ton of that programming out there. Because it is a repeat performance, I'd like to see a little bit more detail in the new or added content section. What's included is very short and a little bit unclear, so I think there's now a choir performance being added. But it would be nice to know like what's changing from year to year, just a little more detail. They estimate that they're going to have an audience of around 450 people, and the program serves primarily an audience of people of color. They do free and discounted ticket distribution to local churches, the YWCA, Urban League, and community centers. Their intended outcomes center on providing opportunities for young people to participate in the success of the event, to provide relevant role modeling for those youth, and to bring diverse cultures together in a positive way, as well as that opportunity to showcase and network opportunities for local artists. So we're seeing that local element to it. Kind of soft evaluation out how they're going to evaluate their outcomes. So critiques from local magazines, and then a survey form. So a little bit of passive, a little bit of push out assessment there. This is another one where their ticket sales are estimated for about 50% of the venue capacity. So kind of conservative on that. They have a good mix of individual and foundation support, but there's no other public arts grants listed. The budget narrative was confusing because it says that the event is free, but the rest of the application is built around the ticketed event. So I think that's more of like either a proofreading or a better clarity of it. Because I know that they do another program in the other cycle that is a free event. So I think there might be just a little mixing of some of the content build there. There's a brief letter of support, but it speaks to the value of the program as a platform for families to spend quality time together. The other supplemental materials were limited to 2 photos of folks that I'm assuming are performers for the event, but the lineup doesn't seem yet confirmed to be announced. So that wasn't really useful inclusion of supplemental materials. So I would encourage this applicant to provide additional supplemental things like performer work samples, some of their marketing info, just to paint kind of a better picture of what to expect for this year. Strengths I highlighted were it's that unique program content for our area, and it has a long track record. So this is going to be the 21st annual event. Their strongest intended outcomes focus on intergenerational connection. Opportunities for improvement, I would say to use the full available field for each area of the application. Many of them are not maxed out and the details provided are kind of thin. So an example, just saying volunteers will be used where needed isn't helpful information versus these are the number of volunteers we're going to have. This is the role that they're going to play. And then use that supplemental materials section to provide more info. Like that's the broadest opportunity we have in this project. It's the most open-ended where you can really highlight things. So I would just suggest that they take that to their advantage.
Megan, second reviewer, your comments, please.
Yeah, thanks, Robin. I agree with everything you've said. I also really appreciate such a niche event with a niche audience. I think it serves, fills that gap. And 21 years, that's amazing, very well established. They gives me confidence that they are going to be pulling off a successful event. I also feel like there was a couple things. There were a couple sections that are actually cut off. Like they didn't, so some of them they didn't use the full amount of character limit. But one of them it looks like they were gonna write the word plenty and then it just says plent and then it cuts off. So I don't know, like I just want to make sure that they're saying what they want to say and they didn't just like paste and run out of words and we don't get to know what they were trying to say there. So just careful on that. And then I also like the supplemental materials were, I really wish there was more or higher relevance. Even there, they only have one letter of support, but the letter of support, while the top of it is dated like this year, it says, I'm writing to support this event being held August 5th, 2023. So I think it's totally appropriate to ask this like similar people for letters of support. But I think this came up in one of the earlier grants too. It just if you're having the same people write them or it's a similar letter, just make sure the dates are correct and maybe have them review it and make some new comments just so that we really know that they're writing about the event that we're reviewing. And then I think that and this is not a fault, but just an area for growth is I think this is such a cool program. I think there's so much room for additional engagement and outreach and programming around it. In their intended outcomes, like Robin said, it's more about just youth volunteering and seeing role models and kind of an intergenerational experience, which I think is great. But with a program like this, outreach to different groups, they didn't have a lot of other community partners or anything. And I think especially I think they said they're in the South Madison area. That's where I live. So there's so many great partners. I've seen a lot of other programs that have really great partners in this area. And I think there are lots of groups that would want to be partners or want to support this or could support this. And, with such a niche project, gospel music, I think there's room for kind of education around it and, partnering with schools or teaching or field trips. I don't know. So I think that was my one, I'm like, okay, cool. It's a 1-day thing. But their total reach, I think they estimated 400, was it? 450. So, for a one day performance, that's great, but I think they could really expand if they wanted to. I think there's so much potential in this project and in this group in this proposal.
Thank you, Megan. Any other comments? Yes, right.
So so this, as both of they said, like it should expand and be very more detailed. The letter of recommendation is from the president of the Urban League. So they probably will partner with them. Latrice it's like putting the information inside so that people know. Latrice Stanley is Leota Stanley's daughter, and he and his wife has a group and they like train and do classes and stuff with different schools. So, and he's also the president of Umoja magazine. So it's just like, if you would know these people are a part of it, you want to put that stuff inside so they know, like, okay, it's the Urban League, it's the Black Business Hub, it's the, you know, Umoja magazine, so people can see all of the different things that you wanted to do. Yeah, I was noticing, like, one of it said something about November 2nd, and then it said the concert on November 4th. And I'm like, wait, these are two different dates, like right up under each other. So just being careful to like make sure you're saying the same thing, like, or if you're doing another a grant, let somebody else review your grant before you turn it in so that you know what you're saying. And then the picture, like, because the honorary artist honorary money is very expensive, and I will tell you now, gospel artists coming into a venue is expensive. And so I saw the picture of Hezekiah Walker and I was like, oh my gosh, is he coming? Because it doesn't say. So I'm like, are you trying to get him in? Are you saying this will help bring him in? So I think with the budget, the narrative, that stuff needs to come in. So enclosed is a picture. These are the people that we're looking to bring in, or something like that. Yes, definitely saying, we're going to have our volunteers do this or be at this part, the different places that you wanted to do. But I mean, it is something that we don't have a lot of times. Black gospel or Black events is usually in like Milwaukee or something like that. So I know they're trying to bring that more into Madison, where there is a minority, and being able to even before the actual fest, if they had time to do it, go to schools and sing some of the songs that will be a part of it, see if there's kids that would like to be a part of it, if they are part of it, and then that will even bring in more people to come see it at the same time. But being more detailed in what you're wanting to say, and because it is like, you got Umoja, I mean, they could have had more letters of support, just because of, you know, all of the people that are around at different places and the things that they do in South Madison. So they could have had somebody else to be able to help with, but maybe it was a time thing, maybe. But hopefully it gets like better detailed, more specific on what you want to do, and then who is a part of it, so that we don't be like, well, I don't know what this means. Like, we understand exactly what you're saying, and we know who's coming, where the money's going, and everything will be like, oh, okay, that makes sense. So hopefully that helps.
Thank you. Jay, did you have a comment?
Yeah, just a very minor one. I forget if it was touched on, but the expected ticket sales, I did calculate those. So with that 15,500, that means 443 tickets would need to sell to reach that amount that they listed in the budget, and the audience is like 450. So it's like they are expecting almost full capacity in order to reach those sales. So that's just something to consider, is like whether making a more conservative estimate, or if you have data backed to show that you typically do sell out.
Thank you. Any other comments? Excellent. Finalize your scores and submit, please.
You did it, everybody. All the scores are in.
I have to say, this is one of the most thoughtful and thorough panels I have ever chaired. It was a real pleasure, and I learned a lot, even more on some of these projects that I'm actually familiar with. So thank you so much for those comments. We only have a few minutes.